Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. I hope that you'll find this time useful today. My name's Todd Peterson. I'm on the product team here at JumpCloud, and I'm going to be in the background most of the time. So I'll just get us started, and then we'll get to the experts that'll tell you the stuff you really want to know. So if you have any questions, and I hope you have questions, please send them in the chat. We will address them at at the end. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you specifically, one-on-one to do it. So let's start off. I introduced myself. That doesn't really matter, but I'll let Antoine and Rob introduce themselves, and I'll go off camera, and then we'll just get started. So go ahead, Antoine.
Thank you, Todd. Hi, everyone. I'm Antoine Jabara. I'm a co-founder here at JumpCloud, and I'm in charge of our password manager.
Hi guys, I'm Rob McGrath. I'm a PM here at JumpCloud, and yeah, also former IT admin. So I've been a user of these types of products in the past as well.
Cool. Let's get started. That's the agenda. We're going to talk about the password problem, the solution, the gaps in the solution, and then we're going to introduce our new password manager, do a quick demo, and then talk about next steps. So let's talk about the password problem. It feels like it's something that we don't need to really talk about because everyone knows how much of a pain passwords are. 80% of data breaches include involved passwords. 40% of help desk tickets involve passwords. So passwords are a major source of frustration and productivity drain. The main reason is that as human beings, we're not good with passwords. And in that specific case, we're in charge of creating them, managing them, and remembering them, and that doesn't happen really well. So it makes the jobs of malicious actors much easier when it comes to trying to access sensitive information, and they're a big source of like a time drain for IT teams who have to spend a lot of time resetting passwords and have to live through the pain of doing that. There is a solution. The solution is theoretically single sign-on. Single sign-on is elegant. It allows you to log into any type of application that's set up without using passwords. Users just authenticate to the single sign-on identity provider, such as JumpCloud, and then JumpCloud takes care of the rest. In that case, logs you into any application that supports single sign-on. The problem with single sign-on, though, is that it's not always supported by vendors, and it's sometimes paywalled. Other vendors charge for it. As a result, you end up with gaps in your deployment. So users have to revert back to using passwords, and if you're using a single sign-on solutions to log in, it's always certain that users are using passwords to log into different types of services. They could do that knowing, like with your knowledge, or it could be a shadow IT type of situation where they're using a certain type of application, don't know about it, and they're using passwords to access it. And just having passwords in the ecosystem and having users in charge of manually having to create, manage, and remember these passwords creates a lot of different types of scenarios that you don't want to be in. It creates more help desk tickets. In some cases, it can lead to data loss if people leave and have access to these specific passwords, and it can certainly lead to data breaches if these passwords are weak, reused, or compromised. This is why we still need password managers today. So passwords seem like they're still here to stay, right? There are different movements that aim to replace passwords across the board, but like passwords look like they're here to stay. So password manager is going to help fill the gaps when single sign-on is not available. It's going to provide secure storage of passwords and other types of secrets. So your users aren't using Excel sheets or storing them on notes or on post-it notes the way they used to when all of us used to go to the office. A password manager is going to provide you with a password generator that's going to incentivize users to create strong and unique passwords when they're signing up to a new service or when they're resetting a specific passwords. And it's going to enable them to securely share credentials. So no more shared spreadsheets, no more sharing credentials on Slack, via email, over the phone, etc. So centralized secure sharing, which gives you visibility and some control over what's being shared. And finally, all of that is a password manager is going to allow you to centrally manage all of that. So you'll be able to provision the password manager, to customers, the users deprovision the password manager from users. You get visibility over who has access to what passwords are shared across the organizations. And when someone leaves the company, you're able to do have an effective process at really terminating their access and resetting all of the credentials that need to be reset. So this is why essentially you still need a password manager in 2022. So these are the different options, right? So if you don't have single sign-on and you're not using a password manager, you have no visibility and no control over access across your organization. You're exposed to data breaches because users are using weak and reused credentials, and there's no proper deprovisioning of users when they leave the company. If you're using single sign-on but not a password manager, that's already a big step. You get partial visibility and control over access across the organization. You're partially exposed to data breaches because users might still use passwords either because you're using services that don't support single sign-on or because users are doing their own thing without your knowledge and they're still using passwords on the side. And when users leave the company, you get partial deprovisioning, like the single sign-on flow is really clear-cut. You stop the access and that's it. But passwords that are in the wild, you don't have control over. Now, the best combination is obviously having both single sign-on and password management. Single sign-on should do most of the work, should give you visibility and control across access across the organization. But when services don't support single sign-on, you fill the gaps with password management. This is where password management comes in. Allows users to, it enforces good behavior essentially across your organization. Your users are using strong and unique credentials. You get visibility over that. When users leave the company, you can properly deprovision them. It's a much better process. So having both of them together is great. So single sign-on with MFA and password management is obviously the best combination that you can have today. And there's no way to live without password management, and it's not recommended to live without single sign-on. So this is where the JumpCloud Password Manager comes in. JumpCloud does identity, access, and device management. Our single sign-on capabilities are one of the best in the world. We have a ton of connectors. We allow organizations to really scale with single sign-on and allow users to seamlessly access applications that support single sign-on. One of the big requests that we've been getting for the past couple of years is password management. Like, how do we fill the gaps when single sign-on is not available? Our users have to revert to using passwords. We have to go to other type of password management vendors. We'd like to stay within the JumpCloud ecosystem. We need you to introduce a password manager, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we're introducing the JumpCloud Password Manager. It's going to complement our single sign-on offering and continue to take you on the path to passwordless, where you authenticate into JumpCloud using a password or soon in a passwordless way, and then JumpCloud takes care of the rest. JumpCloud authenticates users to applications, cloud services, Wi-Fi connections, VPN connections, and it does that regardless of what the authentication protocol required, whether it's SAML, OIDC, passwordless authentication protocol, or password, or when it's password-based as well. And this is what it looks like, essentially. The user authenticates into JumpCloud. Once the user has access to their device, then JumpCloud authenticates them using single sign-on to applications that support it, and the JumpCloud Password Manager takes care of the applications that don't support single sign-on. It's a seamless authentication experience for end users, which is our goal here at JumpCloud. These are some of the features that we are going to have at launch. The password manager is going to store the credentials locally on the endpoints and sync them in an end-to-end encrypted way. That's one of the main features of our password manager. We think that storing credentials in the cloud and giving users master passwords that they have to create, manage, and remember creates another source of friction, of risk that we try to avoid. So there is an elegant way to do it, and that's using this decentralized approach. The endpoints store the credentials. The keys that encrypt these credentials are stored in the secure keychain or the secure enclave of the device, and then sync happens between users and devices in an end-to-end encrypted way through JumpCloud servers. The password manager apps are available on all major platforms at launch, so iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, Linux, and all major browsers, so users can use and access passwords anywhere. The password manager autofills passwords and 2FA tokens, TOTP-based 2FA tokens in the browsers. It enables secure sharing of passwords and other types of credentials through a shared folder feature. It has a password generator that allows users to create strong and unique passwords when they're signing up, or resetting their password on a specific service. It generates password strength reports that users can see and make changes to their vault to have the best and most secure passwords stored in their vault, like very secure passwords stored in their vault. It's deeply integrated with the Jump Cloud Open Directory platform, which allows, like, ties the user identity of Jump Cloud of the directory to the password manager. So you have single sign-on, MFA, device management capabilities, and password management, all tied back to that same identity, which makes management super easy. And it's centrally managed from within the Jump Cloud admin console. So you can deploy it to users, get an idea of what's happening across the organization, see shared passwords that are being created by your users, control the access to users to different types of shared folders, and so on and so forth. And you can use our APIs, the Jump Cloud APIs, to provision and deprovision access to the password manager. With that said, instead of talking more about it, we all think, I think that it's better for you to see it. So Rob here is going to help us, is going to walk us through a demo of the password manager that's hopefully going to answer a lot of the questions that might be starting to brew now. So Rob, take it over.
Perfect. And I'm going to grab this. Awesome. So this is essentially the desktop app of the password manager. Our password manager is made up of really three potential components. We have the desktop app, which is available on Mac OS, Linux, and Windows, of course. So everything I'm showing you here will be identical if I was on a Linux device or a Mac device. In this context, I'm on a Windows 11 virtual machine. It does also work with the biometrics of those operating systems. So in addition to being able to unlock this with a PIN, I can use Touch ID, Windows Hello, or whatever I have configured for authentication on that device. So this will show the desktop app, and the browser extension is also built into the browsers, and we also have a mobile app for both Android and iOS. So digging right in, you can see that this is broken into three different sections. This left side over here is really like a navigation pane. It helps me get to the main parts of the password manager to help me find the items that I have saved. Usually, obviously, the main one will be passwords, and I can see the passwords I have shared here or have imported. These passwords with a folder icon indicate shared items. So these items have been shared with me. Either I've shared them with somebody else or they've been shared with me. So in this case, it's been shared. I also do have payment cards, which I can store a credit card or that I want to share the rest of my team. There's no longer that leaving the card on someone's desk or like an intern's desk and hoping it doesn't come back with, 10 pizzas charged to it or something like that. You'd have a secure notes. This is more of like that kind of that nice dumping ground for places that that data that doesn't necessarily nicely fit into a shared document, and you don't want those residing in the cloud necessarily. Could be security answers or answers to those security questions that you have to set up, license keys, installed scripts, whatever you want to use. I like to use it for this, but really you can have this as that backup spot so you don't have this just sitting on your desktop. Most importantly for many of our users, especially IT admins, is the ability to have 2FA tokens. So we do have a built-in authenticator. It works with this very similar to like a Google Authenticator type app where you have a 2FA secret that you would then copy or scan with the QR code using the mobile app, or you can copy and paste it into here and effectively set up a TOTP code and associate that with, in reality, you could actually even attach it to a password. So for instance, this is a bank account that I have 2FA enabled on. I can simply go here, and this password item also has the 2FA token attached to it. In addition to that, we do have ID cards allowing you to share and save like really driver's licenses, passports, whatever it is that's for personal information. No more hunting down your wallet or anything like that. And identities, which is nice for address autofill and other capabilities like that if you want to keep billing or shipping addresses handy. But the main component, obviously, many of you guys will be using would be the password manager. So the password manager here, we have all the important details. I can easily have this set up. In this case, this is a shared credential, but a non-shared one, this is broken into two different types of vaults. So I have shared folders or I have a personal folder. So the only person that would have access to this password would be myself. Nobody else can have access or visibility into this. Even an admin wouldn't be able to come in and start peeking at my personal passwords, really keeping it much more secure and keeping that scope a lot more limited. But if I do decide to share a credential with someone, we do make that very easy, and your end users are able to do this without a lot of intervention from the admins. So in fact, like this password was created, and let's see, okay, this is a decent password. I can then share this with the rest of my team, or if I needed to update it, let's say this password was found, a data breach or expired or whatever, I can just save this password And as you can see up here, it's syncing back to my other user. So that sync occurs not only for shared items, but also, as Antoine had alluded, this data is stored offline, meaning it is encrypted and stored locally. And I can actually have other devices attached to this as well. So if I had another laptop, if I happen to have another mobile device or whatever, I could add this device to my account, and my device would then function as an additional vault or additional copy of my vault, where the data would be stored on that device as well. And any changes, you're no longer doing anything like copying a database to a USB stick or plugging in or anything like that. You'd be able to update passwords. It automatically would detect that there's been a change, and then it would send a change sync event to the other devices and keep everything in sync. So you're no longer juggling or forcing a manual update on each device. This is now going through having an offline storage, the benefit of keeping it out of the cloud of a centralized database that's just primed for being attacked and targeted by hackers. You now have a local database that is shared across all of your devices in a peer-to-peer kind of fashion, keeping your data safe and local and under your control. Now, folders, this is very important for your team. So like, let's say I wanted to share this credit card with the rest of my crew. I can simply choose this credit card. In fact, I'm going to add it to a folder over here. So I can edit this, drop this into my accounting folder, for instance. And now everybody who has access to this accounting team, which is in this folder, I can manage this team. So forgive the double name of myself, but in this case, on my other device, which I have right over here, this password just showed up, and rather this credit card showed up in my vault, and now I have access, and I can even control the access for this, because obviously you don't want everybody to have the exact same kind of access. So for instance, in this other account, I can decide I can either want them to be almost like a full admin of that folder, which would be a folder manager. I can give them access to update and manage different items, or I can just simply give them read-only access, which would be this folder member. So they can still use the autofill capabilities, but they don't necessarily have the capability of exporting items or copying and pasting it to a sticky note or an Excel sheet or anything else like that. They just only be able to use this in a web page. So this is all great. It's awesome to have this on your desktop, but obviously nobody wants to be copying and pasting these items. So we obviously would have a browser extension. Now, again, this browser extension is available. I'm going to be showing this to you in Firefox today, but it's also in Chrome. It's going to be in Edge. You can also use the Chrome extension in Edge as well. And the Safari extension will be coming when we come for general availability as well. So here, I'm going to show you, this shows up in the top right corner, just like any other extension. This is very much like a mini version of the desktop app. So the same kind of principle of a left pane for navigation, this central area to show you the items themselves, and this right side to show you the details. So we can allow it to filter based on just items. So I'm only viewing accounting items in this context or personal items here. And I also, as Antoine had alluded to before, we have a built-in password generator, which lets you bring it all the way up to 200 characters. You can use this, copy, paste, and directly use it from the browser extension. We also do give you very rich capabilities of being able to customize the behaviors of the extension, because we know extensions don't always behave predictably on every single page. So if you ever have that weird login page or just a particular set of sites that you just does not behave nicely because of how they have their login form set up, you can always control globally or even locally and be able to use your credentials and really not have to rely on, if it's going to work this time. You can tweak it as you need. But ultimately, what you're going to end up doing is probably just using just going to the different sites. So for instance, I'm going to go to my Squarespace site. So I can click here. As you see, it's populated. I have built-in search. I can launch this, and it will detect the username and password fields and auto-submit the login form. It's fine. It's great. But now, one of the most important factors is, okay, this is a shared account. That's awesome, but what about 2FA? A lot of times shared accounts don't have 2FA enabled, which is unfortunate because sometimes those shared accounts have incredibly powerful capabilities. Usually they're an admin account of some form, and that's why they are shared, but enabling 2FA oftentimes breaks the login experience. So you usually have either people not using 2FA or doing the very classic yelling down the hallway for the authenticator code, or frantically finding whoever's phone number this is associated with. In this case, I can have 2FA enabled with any account I'd like. So for instance, I can go to my monday.com account, and I'm able to use autofill my username and my password, and the 2FA token shows up in the top right. I'm going to copy it, but it also just autofilled it for me, and I can just log in. And this does work with probably one of the most popular services out there. Like if I want to go to office.com, I have a shared account or an admin account or whatever I need to log into. I can, of course, show up here, use this, drop this in, and you'll also notice that there's a domain change right here. Went from microsoftonline.com to live.com. I do have multiple domains associated with that password. So now I can go here and see I have lots of domains. So that way, if it does go across, the same credentials go across multiple sites, I can use it on there as well. 2FA token log me in, and there we go. I'm now logged into any account. Anybody that has this account shared with them, they also have the 2FA token. This behavior is identical for all of them, and you can control the permissions for this, revoke access. And the beauty is, if a user is deprovisioned or removed from your instance or simply suspended, and you don't want them to have access to this stuff, these permissions are immediately synced. And if they're completely deprovisioned, all of their accounts and their actual setup of the password manager is nuked. So they no longer have the data stored locally, and it just shows up like a completely blank app, and their access has been revoked. So you've been able to revoke both SSO by deprovisioning their user, but also removing access to the password accounts that they've set up, which has been that nice stopgap, because not everything, let's face it, not everything is compatible with SSO, especially those line of business apps you've probably built your company around. Not every single one of them supports SSO. So this definitely gives you that similar SSO experience. They only need to know their PIN, and this could be on a Jump Cloud protected device, or it can even be protected by their Jump Cloud accounts and their credentials and MFA associated with that. But when this device is nuked and they have their Jump Cloud access revoked, they lose SSO capabilities and also their passwords. So you really can help lock down and protect your businesses with both Password Manager and SSO being enabled. And that more or less is the extension. The other important part I do want to make sure I highlight, we do give you an easy route to bring over items from other password managers. So for instance, I can come in here and bring in items. So if it's been exported, typically it's been to a CSV or an Excel sheet, but a lot of these other services out here, we're able to handle the exported files from them. And I can simply come in here, click this, and I'm able to select my files. So I can easily bring in my passwords from another password manager without really any kind of headache. Just comes right in. The hardest part will be exporting it. So other than that, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. That was very thorough. Let's get the screen back up. So in terms of next steps, the password manager is currently in early access mode, and it'll be released towards the end of October. So if you're interested in learning more about the Jump Cloud Password Manager, if you're an existing customer, you can reach out to your account manager or email PWM, like passwordmanager@jumpcloud.com. If you're a new user or prospect looking to dive deep into Jump Cloud, you can sign up at jumpcloud.com/signup. We're going to put a poll on the screen that's going to ask you whether you're interested to be contacted about the password manager. If you're interested in having a conversation, trying it out, learning more about it, etc., just indicate that you're interested in doing that. So it should be on the screen now. Okay, as a next step, after you do that, let's see. Okay, so I guess Todd now is going to talk about the remaining webinars and events that we have on the calendar. I'm going to move on to the next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Antoine.
Thank you.
All right, so if you found this of value, or maybe one of these other topics is useful to you, please, attend. So we've got Password Manager today. We have a few others here on the screen that you can see. Every other Friday, we have an IT hour, which is kind of just an open forum to talk about stuff and learn things. We have our weekly product demo, and then we have a complete list of our webinars if you go to that final link. So there's a lot of useful content constantly being created. So if any of the identity, access, device management stuff is something that you're working on, something that you may need help with, something that you want to get better at, these are all wonderful places to do it. So with that, I think we can turn to the questions, and I saw there are a lot of them. So Dor, if you could send me the first one. All right, I'll read the questions. You guys can fight over who gets to answer it. I saw
Okay.
this one was answered, but let's reinforce it. Will there be a tool that securely imports directly from other program managers instead of using a CSV?
Yes, as Rob showed us, this feature exists. If you try the product, you don't find your password manager in the list, there's a generic CSV importer. If that doesn't work for any reason, let us know and we'll work with you on adding support for your password manager.
Cool. Next one is Jump Cloud Password Manager module a separate module, or will it be built in the console?
So the password manager today is a separate desktop, iOS, and browser extension app, but we have plans to integrate the capabilities of the password manager in the user console. So that's a roadmap item that we're looking to do.
Cool. All right, now we're getting deeper. If all the account/password data is stored local on the device, what happens if a user's laptop is lost or stolen or suffers from an unrecoverable hardware failure? Without some type of organization managed central storage of this data, it seems like a major risk.
That's a very good question. So there are different ways to mitigate against that. The first one is to encourage users to install the password manager on more than one device, like their phone and their computer. That's specifically useful if users tend to do work on their phones, like reply to their emails and do stuff like that. If that's not the case, then what you can do is the password manager generates encrypted backup files on the devices that it's installed on. As an admin, you can work with users on configuring where the password manager stores these specifically these encrypted backup files, and that folder or path that you set could be a path that's backed up to a third-party appliance like Google Drive or OneDrive, for example. So in the case of a catastrophic hardware failure and the user doesn't have the password manager installed on another device, then you'd still have this encrypted backup file that you can use to restore the user's access to passwords. Also, any passwords that need to be accessed by more than one users are encouraged to be included in shared folders. And if they are in shared folders and a user loses access to their only device, then when they re-sign up to the password manager, the other users will automatically sync back all passwords shared with that users that are part of the same shared folders that user is part of.
Cool. Next one, is it possible to disable the area for saving payment cards and/or ID cards?
It is possible. So we do have a lot of controls in there to control which type of credentials get autofilled on which types of websites. So that it's very likely that you're able to do that. If you find that the existing capabilities don't match your specific needs, let us know. This is a thing that we can easily add to the roadmap.
Cool. Next one, is Password Manager included in the regular pricing of Jump Cloud, or will it be an optional add-on for an additional cost?
So Password Manager will be an optional add-on for an additional cost. The price is going to be $3 per user per month.
Cool, thanks. Will existing two-factor authentication configurations sync between Jump Cloud Protect and Password Manager, or would it require the MFA be reset and reconfigured?
So at this moment, Jump Cloud Protect and the Password Manager are two different apps. That said, we have a plan to merge the two apps in the future. When that happens, it's very likely that the merge will be seamless and that one day you'll have both apps and the vaults will just unify into one of the apps. For the time being, we recommend that any 2FA that you're not intending to share with different users, you keep in Jump Cloud Protect. And any 2FA that you need to share with other users through shared folders, you add to the Password Manager. This way, you're able to slowly transition some of the 2FAs into the password manager when needed, but keep Jump Cloud Protect for push-based 2FA, which is something that the password manager does not support at the moment, and for 2FAs that should only be accessible to a single user.
Cool. Next one, can we share passwords across teams?
Yes, you can. So today, through shared folders, you can invite multiple users to these shared folders and share credentials with these users. We do have a feature in the roadmap to allow you to share folders directly with user groups, Jump Cloud user groups. So today, when you create a shared folder, you have to add users one by one. In the near future, you're going to be able to take a Jump Cloud user group and directly attach it or bind it to that shared folder.
All right. Can the passwords that reside on a stolen device be wiped remotely?
Yes, so you can deprovision the device. The user can do it themselves if they have another device that they'd like to wipe it on, or the admin could do it from their end. As soon as that other device connects to the internet, it will wipe the password vault.
All right, next one, getting a little deep again. How do you keep two local copies without using the cloud?
So let's say you have two devices, device A, device B. Both devices have the Password Manager app installed on it. The Password Manager app creates a private public key pair on every single one on every single device. The public key of every device is shared with the other device, so they know each other's public keys. Now, when I add a password to device A, it should sync to device B. The way that happens is device A takes the public key of device B, it encrypts that password with the public key of device B, then signs it with their own private key. And that encrypted sync, end-to-end encrypted sync, is relayed through Jump Cloud servers and sent to that other device. If the other device is currently online, it's instantaneous, it's a seamless sync. If the other device is currently offline, this end-to-end encrypted sync, which is not readable by Jump Cloud or anyone else aside from the recipient, is stored on our servers temporarily while we wait for that other device to go online. As soon as it does go online, the sync event goes down. The signature is verified to make sure that it's coming from someone they trust, which is device A in this case, and then the sync is decrypted using the public key of device number B, and the changes are incorporated into the database of that user. I hope that makes sense. It's a lot of steps. For users, this is seamless, so they just see it sync.
It made sense to me, but I work here. Next one, do admins have the ability to prevent users from creating ad hoc shared folders and sharing credentials with others?
So currently, any user can create a shared folder in the Password Manager. With that said, we have a plan to create a policy engine to allow admins to restrict folder creation. From experience, though, what I know is that when a user really needs to share a password with another user, they're going to find a way to do it. So might as well they do it through shared folders as opposed to sending it via an email or on Slack. But the feature is coming.
Cool. Is Password Manager enabled by default, or are we able to enable it once we review the functionality? In other words, can we, test it before it starts to actually work?
The Password Manager needs to be activated by you, and when you activate it as an admin from the admin console, when it becomes generally available, or if you let us know that you want to join the EA and we activate it for you now, between now and then, when you do activate it, you enroll users to the Password Manager through user groups. So you can create a user group that only has the testers in it, enroll that in the Password Manager. Only the testers will get access to the Password Manager. And when you decide to open it up to a broader set of users, you either enroll a bigger user group or enroll different user groups depending on the departments or the sites that you're managing.
Cool. Next one, is it possible to programmatically update information stored within Password Manager? For instance, if there is an external automation that updates or rotates API and or security keys, etc., can that be securely pushed to Password Manager via API?
So CRUD actions on the Password Manager Vault are not API controlled on day one. It's a roadmap item that we're looking to introduce. The way we're going to introduce it is through a command line interface. So you'll be able to invoke it via a script and then get it to make changes in your vault. But at launch, this is a feature that doesn't exist in the Password Manager.
Cool. A real quick one. Will there be an extension for Opera?
So Opera, the way I remember Opera extensions work is that they are Chromium based. So a Chrome extension should be functional on Opera. We're not planning to be on the Opera store this year because the Opera store behaves in a very specific way with long review cycles that aren't optimal for companies that need to release quick updates when a product was just launched. I think though that a Chrome extension can be installed on Opera, so it should work in Opera.
Cool. Yeah, it can. You can do a Chrome extension.
Nice. All right, this is the type I like to hear. Can we sign up for early access? So Antoine, can you remind us on how they get involved in that?
Yeah, you absolutely can. If you have an account manager, reach out to them. If you're not sure who your account manager is, just email pwm@jumpcloud.com. PWM like password manager @jumpcloud.com.
All right. Do you have to enable the use of Jump Cloud Password Manager in the Jump Cloud administration portal first?
Yes, so you have to activate it first so it becomes available to the entire company, but the users don't get invited to it or enrolled to it automatically. This you have to do manually by enrolling user groups. There's a specific section in the admin console now that shows the password manager. It's going to show up under single sign-on. You're going to have a lot of controls in there to control how the password manager gets deployed, and it's going to give you some controls over the shared folders and access logs and things like that.
Okay, cool. What if an employee was an admin or manager for an app and they leave the company? Is there any way to access their password manager information to gain access to the service they managed?
So there is an indirect way of being able to do it. I mentioned earlier that the password manager creates encrypted backups stored locally on the user's devices. The password manager allows you to set the path where these backups get stored. So you could set it to a folder that's backed up to a cloud backup service. And when that employee leaves, if you really need to access their vault, what you could do is gain access that encrypted backup from the cloud backup provider, reset their Jump Cloud credential to impersonate the user, and then impersonate the user, re-sign up to the password manager using their credentials, and feed that backup file to restore their access. It's not easy, but it's not easy on purpose. The reason for it not being easy is that whether we want it or not, users tend to store personal stuff in their password managers. So we tell them all day long that this is an enterprise password manager. You should use it for enterprise accounts. You shouldn't put your personal bank information and your personal Facebook and Twitter accounts in there. But they end up doing it. So the passwords will be in there. If you absolutely need to gain access, there is a way. It's not straightforward, but yeah, it's the steps that I outlined.
All right, cool. So a little more clarity on the sharing with teams. Is it possible to share a password with someone without disclosing the password?
Absolutely. So as Rob mentioned earlier, when you add a user to a shared folder, you can give them one of three roles. They can be an admin, which gives them full control over the users and the passwords in the folder. They can be an item manager. That's a permission that only allows them to edit, update, add, and delete passwords in the folder. Or they could be folder members. Folder members, which is the lowest permission, only allows for autofill. And when autofill happens, there are black bars that cover the input fields to hide what's being autofilled. The users can't copy the passwords, and the users can't see the passwords in the password manager. That would be the closest thing to try to control the user's access to that password. With that said, there's a big disclaimer. The way passwords work, as you all know, is by submitting them in clear text format in web forms. So if users really want to gain access to these passwords, they could intercept the web request, they could inspect the page HTML and try to interrupt the execution of the page while this is happening. So this is only a way to kind of set a framework and be able to have control, like set controls in place to restrict accessing passwords across the organization. But if someone is malicious and really wants to try to do it, there's always a way to do it.
All right. Can you import passwords from other password managers, for example, LastPass?
Yeah, I mean, we answered that one before. There is an import capability. LastPass is on the list.
What do shared folders look like in the admin console?
So in the admin console, shared folders get listed. This is the list of all shared folders created by all users. When you click on a shared folder, you're gonna get metadata about the shared folders, how many passwords are in there, how many users are in there, when it was created, and then you'll get a list of all of the users and their permissions. You can make changes to the permissions of the users, and soon we're adding metadata about the items that are in these shared folders in the admin console. So you'll be able to see the nickname and the domain name of the accounts that have been added to the shared folder. You obviously won't be able to see the passwords or any other sensitive fields stored in there.
All right, this one I think we answered, but let's get some more clarity on it. Is there a mobile app, and how close are the functions between the extension app and the mobile app?
So I would say there is a mobile app. It's available on Android, iOS, and iPad OS. The mobile app has 100% of the features of the Chrome extension and the desktop app. So it's going to have You're going to be able to see passwords, edit passwords, move passwords to groups. You get a security dashboard that shows you your strong passwords. You have autofill in apps and websites using the native Android autofill and the native iOS autofill capabilities. And you can add more devices, revoke access to devices. It's a complete, it's not a lightweight app. It's a fully featured app.
What's the user experience like between the two? Are they, I mean, is it identical? They don't have to, there's not learning curve jumping from one to the other?
There shouldn't be. I mean, obviously, the aspect ratio of a mobile phone and desktop app is different, and the way you click on buttons and use the interface is different. But for most people, it should be, there's no learning curve. It's pretty easy to use.
Right. Cool. I know that some of you on this call are in the MSP world. We have a session today at 2 p.m. that will cover that specifically for password manager. So, you know, some of the questions we may not get to here, we will certainly get to there if you know, for the MSPs. All right, next one. Is it possible for an admin to have insight into what passwords have been shared via shared folders without needing to be a member of all the shared folders?
Yes, so this is a feature that we are hoping to have ready by launch, and if it's not, it's going to come shortly after launch. So when you click on a shared folder in the admin console, you'll be able to see all of the users that are part of this folder, and as well as you're going to also be able to see all of the accounts, metadata that are stored in these folders. Not the secrets, not the passwords and the credit card number and stuff, but the metadata, the nicknames, the URLs, the type of credit card, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. All right, next one. Is it feasible to have local passwords reside in a Google Drive or OneDrive folder, or will it conflict with Password Manager's native sync?
So use Google Drive or OneDrive as the main database. So you can use OneDrive and Google Drive as backups to the encrypted vault. But the live vault, which is used for sync and the main capabilities, needs to reside on the local device for the app to be able to operate the way it should. It's expected to.
Mm-hmm. Does the encryption used create an overhead to network or processor performance on the end user's machine?
Not really. We've tried this with syncing to thousands of users, hundreds of passwords synced to thousands of different devices. It isn't really like processors today have become so powerful that doing these types of tasks are relatively easy. So no, users shouldn't notice any performance degradation.
Cool. If a password is changed on a non-SSO site, how is that handled?
So the password manager is going to detect while you're changing the password in the website. When it does detect the password change, it's going to prompt you to update that password in the vault. Hit update, password gets updated. If it's part of a shared folder, it gets automatically resynced with the other users that are part of that shared folder.
All right, next one. For enrolled user groups for Password Manager, if there are users overlapping through groups, would that cause an issue for Password Manager?
It shouldn't. A user has a single identity in Jump Cloud, and it's that identity that we rely on. No.
Cool. Is the desktop app capable of working alone with other password managers, or can they be disabled when not needed?
Capable of working alone with other password managers,
Or can they be disabled with when not needed?
So once you transition into the Jump Cloud Password Manager, you really don't need to use another password manager. Now, if you have another password manager for your personal accounts, like for your personal life outside of work, and a password manager for Jump Cloud for your company, which is the Jump Cloud Password Manager, you could have both running side to side. That is a possibility. We even have an option in the extension settings to offset the browser, the password manager icon that shows in the input field by a specific number of pixels to accommodate another icon in case it exists. It's a pretty common scenario.
All right, cool. Here's one that I think I know the answer to, but you can answer it. Is there a way to test drive this on a personal 10-user Jump Cloud account, or only by subscription?
So you should be able to test drive it in early access. I would suggest that you talk to your account manager, or if you're not sure who that is, email us at pwm@jumpcloud.com and we'll figure out the details, see if it's possible, and if it's possible, activate it for you.
Well, and when it's all said and done, so when we're, in general availability, a 10-user account, the free account JumpCloud gets full access to Password Manager, correct? For those 10 users. Or is that an add-on?
I'm not 100% sure. We need to get back to you on that. So I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. And just to let everybody know that you will receive an email following this webinar with a link to the recording as well as the deck itself. So, keep your eye out for that. All right, got a couple more questions. Are there any plans to add the functionality to define regular expression for URL websites?
So today there's no plan to have, sorry, the way to say it is regular expression support does not exist in the product. With that said, you can tweak whether you want a password to be autofilled for an exact domain or for the exact domain and subdomains. So there is this macro control that allows you to restrict it to the exact domain or to the entire subdomain space. Regular expression support is something that we've received a lot of requests for. So it is in the roadmap, but I'm not sure when we're going to include it in the product.
All right, so here's our last question for this, but any additional questions that anyone has, please send them in and we will follow up with you directly and answer your questions, but we're at the end of our time. Are there audit logs of actions like create, change, delete, or access passwords? Probably for access.
Yeah, at launch, we're going to have audit logs available. You're going to be able to see most actions that users take on the password manager. You're also going to be able to audit most actions that admins do on the admin side of things. So yes, audit logs, obviously they're an important thing when it comes to password manager, and we do plan to have them ready by the time we go to general availability.
Awesome. Well, we've hit the end of our time. Thank you everybody so much for those great questions. I hope we answered them satisfactorily to you, and I'm excited about the amount of interest everybody's showing in this solution. So, go to those links that we provided you. You'll receive them also in the email, and we would love to get you playing around with this thing, and we be happy to help you solve whatever authentication and access management problems you may have. And password management is a big, almost forgotten power in that world. So thanks for coming. We appreciate your attendance, your interaction, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Please subscribe and check out more content from us.